Hi guys, welcome back to the Shannon Show. Hello if you're new. So today's video is going to be a spoiler review of I Am Not Okay With This season 1. So right out the bat, seeing this trailer, they kind of promoted it as, you know, the people who made Stranger Things made this. We know there's going to be some weird superpower stuff going on. It's got two notable people on it as the main cast who were also in it together. Sophia, Lilies and Wyatt Olive, and some newcomers in there too. In terms of what I thought going into this, you know, Stranger Things is such a good series, so I was expecting at least a decent series. I think it's interesting that they're now going to the teenery. Obviously, Stranger Things started off basically centering around children, and obviously now the children are growing up. But I thought it'd be interesting to see it like going into something similar in a high school setting, because I feel like with the high school setting, teens, young adults, it can be a bit hit and miss. In terms of the introduction of the series, they kind of go down diary / narrator route. Sophie Ellis, who plays Sidney, is the narrator of the series, and we are basically witnessing her diary unfold. Introduces herself as a self-identified boring white girl with a bad temper and quote-unquote daddy issues, and is encouraged by her school counselor to live a normal school life, which she tries to do, and then obviously, right on track, her powers start to appear, causing havoc for her life. So before we go into the narrative, let's talk about the characters. So Sidney, I like Sidney's character. I feel like she has this awkward charm about her. I feel like there's also an element of we're rooting for her because we kind of feel sorry for her at the same time. I think Sophie did an excellent job portraying her in terms of her emotions. She does have a bad temper, but it's not the typical, okay, she's angry, she's just an angry teenager. We also see her anxious, we see her embarrassed, we see her upset, we see her sad. So I was pleasantly surprised that they didn't go down that one note angry teenager route. And then obviously Deena, Sid's best friend. I don't know how I feel about Deena, because I feel like Deena was a bad friend. I feel like Deena's that friend when they get a boyfriend and they ditch you, and then suddenly you're friends again, and they only hang out with you when they're having issues with their boyfriend, and then everything goes back to normal-ish when they break up with the boyfriend. Obviously her and Sid reconnect, but I feel like they kind of just brush over the fact that Deena was a bad friend. It's just kind of just like, okay, we're friends now. Again. Obviously Sidney is very fond of Deena. Obviously the reason why Sidney is so forgiving is because she's clearly in love with Deena. I mean, I don't not like Deena as a character, but I just had to side-eye that reunion because I'm just like, the girl, and especially because this Brad Lewis guy was such a trash boyfriend as well, I'd probably be more accepting of the ditching as a friend if the person you were ditching me for was a stand-up person. But the fact that it was for this trash-ass Bradley Lewis guy, I wouldn't have been able to like forgive and look past that so easily. And especially in high school, I'm not sure if that would be realistic. I probably would have not spoken to you for at least a week until you probably apologized to me. And then obviously Stanley, played by Wyatt Olive. I really liked Stanley. I felt like he was an awkward, sweet kid, and he always was down to help Sidney, no matter what her intentions were when she was asking him for help. He was always down to help her. Stanley was a rider. He didn't expose her. He kept her secret. Granted, he does obviously really like Sidney. And I think he probably is still hoping there could be something there. But even still, after the rejection, he's still riding for Sidney. This is the type of friends that you really need in your life. Not this Deena girl. I really want some justice for Stanley in the next season. Other characters we see are Sidney's brother. I really like Sidney's brother. I felt like he was just like a really cute little brother. I also felt like the little brother was actually quite mature for his age. I'm not sure if they said how old he was. I'm assuming he's like 10 and under. That little actor has some acting chops. He's getting picked on at school. Sidney tries to defend him to his bullies, but it seems like that only makes it worse. When Sidney finally gets her powers unlocked, she needs to step to this bully and show him what's what. Or better yet, hide in the bushes and make it seem like he is the one who's doing it. See her mother. I feel like her and her mother have a pretty normal teenage daughter and mother relationship. You know, they're always going at each other, they're always quite antagonistic, but there is that love there, and you do see them have heated moments, you do see them have emotional moments, and you do see them have, you know, softer and more loving moments. And I felt like the mother-daughter relationship was believable and relatable, because not everybody has a perfect relationship with their mother where the mother is sweet all the time and only says positive affirmation. Most of the time when you ask around, it's quite rare. Most girls are having arguments or disagreements with their mothers. And then of course, Bradley Lewis. Honestly, when they were talking about Bradley Lewis in the diner, I felt like they were alluding to, okay, Bradley Lewis is the most popular boy in the school. He's the hottest boy in the school. Every girl wants him. And when they said that, obviously, we see him in the kind of first scenes, but they don't actually say but they don't actually reveal who he actually is till we get to that diner scene. And before that, there was two people. There was Bradley Lewis and his friend, Ricky. And when they were talking about this, basically this heartthrob, this hottie, this boy that everybody wants, I thought they were talking about Ricky. Because if you look at them both, you would assume that they were talking about Ricky. No disrespect to who plays Bradley Lewis, but in terms of teen heartthrobs or the teen hottie at the school, he wouldn't have been my first pick. But what do you guys think? Do you feel like Bradley Lewis was the perfect school hottie? Or were you a bit confused? But what I will say is that Bradley Lewis, the actor who plays him, did a very good job at being that stereotypical trashy jock. And honestly, I don't know why Deena even bothered putting up with him. Like, honestly, that young love really is stupid. I would have hated being in that relationship, because it was kind of just like Bradley wanted her to go everywhere with him. When he was ill, she had to not be having fun. And then on top of that, he's cheating off of her work at school. I'm sorry, I would have drew the line at you trying to cheat in public with me. I'm not gonna lie, baby. Honestly, I feel like I was a very mature teenager and I would not have gone out with this Bradley Lewis dude. But I just feel like if you're gonna help your boyfriend with his schoolwork or whatever, cool. But don't do it in public. Please, ladies, whoever's watching this, impressionable teens, don't be like Deena. I think after that detention, I would have been like, rah, like this boy's actually messing up my education. It's time to just lock off the relationship. But you know, young love and that. But yeah, did anyone kind of relate to Deena and Bradley Lewis's relationship, or did you just feel like, Deena, what are you doing, girl? Moving on to the narrative. Obviously, I feel like the key narrative is Sidney has these powers and she doesn't really know what to do with them. She's trying to control them. Stanley's trying to help her to control them, obviously, when he finds out. And she's trying to keep it all a secret on top of that. So in terms of the whole power storyline, obviously the season was quite short, but I probably would have liked to have seen her at least start control her powers. It still feels very much at this point that she doesn't really know what she's doing. Forgive my voice, I've got a cold creeping up on me. Obviously at the end, we see this mysterious entity who she suspected was following her, who I'm assuming is going to like teach her how to control her power, since Stanley doesn't really know what he's doing. I guess because the series was so short, it wasn't unsatisfying, but I feel like I would have enjoyed it more to see her kind of start to have some control over her powers. In terms of Sidney being a teen and trying to be a normal teen, obviously we see her losing her virginity. We see her, well, we don't really see her do it. And we see her smoking weed for the first time. And those are kind of stereotypical teenage stuff. Is it realistic? From my experience looking back, I feel like it was. When you're a teenager, that's when people start smoking weed. When you're a teenager, that's when people start having sex. In terms of how they kind of presented it, I felt like Sidney was doing it to fit in, to keep up with Deena, because Deena had a new boyfriend now. Deena was having sex. Deena was really cool. She was the cool girl. And she was trying to keep up with that. But they didn't really narrate it like that. But I feel like there was some elements of that in it. In most teen films, most of the time when like virginity is involved, it's presented as this like special thing. Girls want to do it with somebody special and in a loving environment and a romantic environment, and they want to do it with the right person. And in school, I'd say like 90% of the girls were like that, and then there was the 10% that didn't really care. But then there's also that group that just want to get it over and done with, and I felt like that's what she wanted to do. But again, they didn't really address it in the narrative. It was just like Deena had sex, and then like, you know, an episode later Sidney had sex with Stanley. I just felt like a bridge was missing for that moment. But what do you guys think? Do you just feel like there should have been a narrative surrounding that, whether it was I just want to get this over and done with, I just want to be a normal teenager, or do you feel like it wasn't necessarily needed? Another thing with the narrative is the way that they introduced her dad's death. It was just kind of just like, you know, I have, you know, issues because my dad died and, you know, it's really affected me. Then it was like, everything's been so different since my dad killed himself. And I was just like, what? Killed himself? I was like, can you really just like throw stuff in there? Like, so I felt like I just threw that in there so nonchalantly, like almost like it was like my dad died of cancer. It was just like, oh, everything's been so different since my dad killed himself. I was just like, oh, okay. And then after that, they were just like, you know, after, you know, he hung himself in the basement, I was just like, okay. They've just introduced it to the narrative so casually. It kind of threw me off a bit, not gonna lie. Did it throw anyone else off? I'm not sure how they should have introduced it, but I felt like they should have maybe introduced it in a way that wasn't so jarring. I don't know. It just felt very jarring to me. Obviously, there is other various storylines. She also doesn't like this Lewis Bradley guy. It's clear that she cares a lot for Deena, and I feel like it's easier to hate this Bradley Lewis guy because he's trash. Sidney finds out that Lewis is out here cheating on her girl Deena, and she snitches, and then after that Lewis Bradley has some kind of grudge and vendetta against her because he feels offended that he got caught out. And then that brings us to the final episode. I feel like the final episode was quite chill. Everybody making up with each other, everyone forgiving each other. It's very wholesome. And, you know, they're at prom, and then suddenly Lewis Bradley takes the mic. It's all getting a bit Carrie vibes. Obviously, at this point, we know that Sidney has lost her diary. So as soon as he got on the stage, I'm just like, okay, here we go. He's got this diary. So this Lewis Bradley guy is out here exposing Sidney. He's basically saying she's in love with Deena and exposes that they kiss. And he's just very angry, very pressed, very entitled. In Sid's head, she's telling him to shut up. She's not really saying anything. She's just kind of just standing there, boiling at this point, telling him to shut up. And at this point, nothing was really happening in the room. There was no shaking, there was no quaking. So I just kind of felt like she was gonna hold it down, you know, nothing bad was gonna happen. We hear that noise, we hear the high-pitched frequency, and you know what I thought was going to happen is that she was just gonna lift him off the ground and throw him somewhere, or he was just gonna end up flying somewhere. That's what I thought was gonna happen. And then obviously she kills him by making his like head burst open. I'm not gonna lie, when that happened, I burst out laughing. I was like, what the hell is going on, babe? It just looked so funny, like the blood just coming out of the head and then the headless body, and then, I'm sorry, it looked hilarious. Did anyone else laugh? Was anyone shocked? I don't know, I just felt like that was so funny, I'm not gonna lie. Rest in peace, Lewis Bradley. I mean, she warned him, you know, she didn't say it out loud, but like, he knew he was provoking her. So it's just a thing where like, you reap what you sow, in it. I guess, you know, did he deserve to get his head blown off? Should there have been another punishment for Bradley Lewis? Am I upset that Bradley Lewis is dead? Do I grieve for his fictional promise? No, I don't. Honestly, he was a douchebag. I don't think it was like murder level douche, but I'm not mad that he's dead. I probably sound so evil right now, but yeah, that was hilarious. And then after that, it's like pandemonium. Everyone is screaming and running, and I probably would have stopped. And Deena is just standing there like hovering over Bradley's body. I'm just like, yeah, she must really like this boy, because I would have been running, because at this point, obviously he was about to expose her, but you know, she blew his head off before that could happen. So nobody really knows what happened. So if we're looking at at the perspective of these unknowing people, what could that have been? Could that have been a covert gun? Could that have been a covert sniper? Could that have been a bomb? We don't know. If you imagine you're just at prom and then somebody's head like blows off, like fully blows off, I would have started running as well. Even if Bradley Lewis was my baby, the love of my life, I still would have kept running, because who knows what else could have happened. And then obviously we see the final scene. She's running, she's got the white dress, her body is covered in blood. We've got some Carrie iconography homage going on, and then obviously she gets introduced to that evil entity guy. In terms of what I think will happen next, obviously we'll find out what this evil entity guy is. Obviously the whole Bradley Lewis situation has to be dealt with, but how will they be able to deal with that? Obviously it's a police matter now. What is the verdict going to be? I don't think Sidney will be charged for it. Obviously no one can prove that it was her, but I think at this point Deena knows it was her, because Sidney didn't explicitly tell her that she had powers, but she had told her that there was something wrong with her. And I feel like Deena at this point would clock. I'm interested to see what happens next. I'm not sure what will happen next. I hope that is interesting. I hope that they switch it up a bit, because I feel like with Stranger Things, even though it's a pretty solid season, every season it's pretty much almost the same thing, and I hope that's not the case with this season. In terms of relationships that I zip after watching the whole season, I think it's clear it's between Deena and Sidney, and Sidney and Stanley. Obviously, the first time that Sidney and Deena kiss, Deena, even though at this point she has kind of broken up with Bradley Lewis temporarily, she rebuffs her, and they both kind of brush it off as, you know, they were drunk, but then they kind of address it at the prom, and Deena basically says that she did not like it. I'm not gonna lie, in terms of teen, young adult stuff, the whole I developed feelings for my best friend and now we're together is old and it's tired, and I want to see something new. Personally, I do not ship this relationship. Stanley and Sidney, on the other hand, I definitely stand them together, but I'm not sure if they will get together. Maybe, because I feel like with these shows, they do listen to audience feedback. So if there was an overwhelming push for Sidney and Stanley to become a proper couple, I feel like the writers would be perceptible to that and would, you know, they'd be back together. I just feel like if a relationship is on Sidney's mind, Stanley is the best candidate. But yeah, let me know who you ship. Do you ship Deena and Sidney, or do you ship Sidney and Stanley? So overall, I feel like it was a good experience. It was quite quick. It wasn't like an hour episode. Like when I first saw it and it was 7 episodes, oh my gosh, it's gonna be 7 hours. But it was only 3 hours and 20 minutes. Like you could watch 3 episodes in an hour if you watched them all back to back. But I feel like I do prefer it when episodes are 22.5 an hour long rather than a whole hour. It just feels like a smoother and easier experience for me personally. I feel like it's a very easy binge watch. The narrative, pretty solid. There's enough there to keep you wanting to see their next season. Acting, I couldn't really fault it. They've also got some really funny, awkward moments in there, especially between Sidney and Stanley. Even with the awkwardness, they still have this chemistry about them. My favourite scene was when Sidney stuck up for Deena, who got detention after letting Bradley cheat on her, and Stanley, bless his heart, decided to just like stand up, but he didn't know what to do. So he just pushed his stuff off the desk and said motherfucker, like really, really enthusiastically, just so he could be a part of sticking up for Deena. I feel like that was my favourite scene. Those little awkward moments are probably the things that I appreciated the most from the series. Cinematography, solid, standard. There was some pretty nice notable shots in there. I'm not really sure what the vibe was. It was kind of just like modern, but also had this 80s vibe. I'm not really sure when it's supposed to be. But overall, I enjoyed it. I'd recommend watching it in terms of who I think it's for. I would say it's more leaning towards a teen/young adult audience. Overall, I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. I feel like it was a solid beginning and it provides promise for the next season. I'm pretty sure it's going to be well received, and I'm pretty sure that it's going to be renewed for another season. But yeah, let me know what you thought about the series. Let me know what you thought about my review. Subscribe if you haven't yet. And if you have, don't forget to put that notification bell on so you'll know when the next review is dropping. Till next time, guys. Bye.